suppressed and controlled by morality and moral judgments. We recognize this, right? Instinct, and that's obvious. That doesn't require any deep philosophy, right? I think what's cool about this now is that we're at a level where it should be pretty clear, because this happens to us, right? There's stuff that I want to do that's immoral. It might not be illegal, but I definitely have thought about doing some. I've definitely engaged in immoral behavior, right? Because part of me just wanted to do it, right? Part of me just wanted to see what it was like. Part of me just wanted to feel it. Part of me just wanted to taste it. Part of me just wanted to see it, whatever it might be. But the point is that morality is going to run in opposition to what I want to do. It's going to tell me, Jason, you know, the fact that you want to do that is immoral. You ought not. And I drew the picture up before, right? We say do X, and you need to do X. We say don't do X, and there you are doing it, right? So instinct, as natural, is suppressed and controlled by morality and moral judgments, which according to Nietzsche is, and this is from Note 53, anti-biological, right? He brings the term anti. This is Nietzsche's term, not my term, right? So when we're talking about histrionics, we recognize that histrionics is also anti-biological. And if you can keep the image in your head, we remember before that this idea of pessimism, nihilism, informed our scientific ideals. Those ideals informed our social ideals, our social norms. And the idea was of National Socialism. Those social norms influence our judgments, our social judgments, and those social judgments condemn people, right? So the point is, if the judgment becomes anti-biological, right? And I can get deep, something just popped in my head, but I could get a little controversial. Why not? It's not too controversial. The image that, because I'm sitting on a lecture, but of course I'm in my office, and I've done a tour of my office. Hopefully you've watched the tour of my office. Just go to my YouTube page and type in office, and then you can see what I'm looking at. So I'm giving a lecture, and I look and I see Busta Rhymes on the wall, and I see his dreads, and immediately I was like, yeah, that's bad though, right? Walking around with your hair locked up, having dreadlocks is unacceptable, right? For women, African American women, to walk around in the workforce with a blowout afro is unacceptable. Social norms sort of dictate that we ought not to do that. They tell us, well, perm your hair because you'll advance and you'll have better, and then there's a whole bunch of problems that arise from African American women conforming to this socialized norm, right? A whole bunch of crap happens, right? They can't exercise. I heard something on NPR about black women not exercising because they don't want to mess their hair up. Chris Rock does this video about how it's called, I think it was called Good Hair, about how you impoverish yourself basically in servitude, spending $1,500 a month on hair. I mean, it's why are they doing that? Because there's a judgment. You're not as good as me. You don't look as good as me. You're not as smart as me because you got different type of hair. It's as stupid as it sounds, right? The whole point is that it becomes it's a denial of this for this, right? That system of judging, that system of pointing, of telling you what you ought, what you shall do, becomes unnatural. So what does the black woman do? She does what's unnatural. I'm not knocking people who do it, right? Almost every woman in my life has straightened her hair. I don't have a problem with that at all, right? But you embrace that which is unnatural, because in a sense, this perverse and this perversion of ideals, social scientific ideals, social scientific norms, deny the instinct. They deny the natural. They deny the ancestor. They deny history. They deny your embodiment. They deny who I am. It's set in opposition to me. And insofar as my hair grows out of my head like this, well, no, your hair shouldn't grow like that. So it forces this unnatural sort of state of affairs. And not just to do always black, and this might even be more controversial, not always to just do black people or black women, for white women. Again, I'm not trying to, this is just my interpretation. I definitely, correct me if I'm stepping out of line here. What I see, what I see as an outsider, I'm not in the white community, what I see as an outsider is a tremendous amount of pressure on white women to be really, 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 really unnaturally thin, right? It's like, and I'm not saying all white guys do, but it seems like there's different standards of taste, right? The aesthetics for women's beauty is different in the black community as it is in the white community. I'm on a tangent here, but I'm using this to explain this, right? Black community sort of voluptuous, white community very, very sort of, emaciated might be too strong a word, but extremely thin, unnaturally thin. And white women have the pressure, just like the black woman has the pressure to straighten her hair, the white woman has the pressure to maintain this extremely, extremely thin frame, which obviously leads in many cases to eating disorders and such, right? Where does that pressure come from? Where does unnatural, it comes from the judgments. Where do the judgments come from? It comes from the values, right? Who are placing these values? Well, that's what we're going to find out, right? The bad guys, right? are placing these values on women, for example. So that's one, to legitimize the anti-biological, and it's also to legitimize both the role of the values and the judgments as not only anti-biological but unnatural. It is an unnatural state of affairs. All right, so instinct is suppressed and controlled by morality and moral judgments, which according to Nietzsche is anti-biological. That's note 53. The next point is the valuation that is today, the valuation that, this is a quote, this is not me, this is Nietzsche, the valuation that is today applied to different forms of society is anti-biological. What is crazy about that is that this is 2011, and when you read that note, note 53, it applies to today. The examples that I just gave you applies to this note. The valuation that is today applied to different forms of society, I gave you some different aspects of different forms of society, is anti-biological. It's a part of this histrionics, right? It's a part of this history of domination, right? We recognize that the handlers, quote unquote, are, to be technical, the value positors, let's be technical. You should know the technical term now. So we recognize that the history that is told is a history wherein value positors create and systematize, design the moral standards, the valuations in which those they want to dominate and oppress subscribe, right? It's a system, it's the story of the unfolding story of oppression and control, right? And this story of oppression and control, I mean, even my interpretation is pessimistic, but this is me, right? The story of oppression and control unfolds in an act, right? It unfolds in an act. It unfolds in an act of an unnatural state of affairs. It only is operationalized insofar as it's non-biological. There has to be something that's being condemned. There has to be something that's wrong. There has to be something that's bad. There has to be a finger pointing, and it's you. It's not that your morals are wrong. It's not that your values are wrong. We're past that. That was book one. You're wrong. Your physical embodiment. This is so easy now to see how this applies to sort of National Socialism, right? This perversion. He's not endorsing it. My interpretation at this point, I do agree with aspects of Love 83 Forever's interpretation. At this point, I look at this as like, this is the condition for the possibility of justifying. This is how the oppressor attempts to justify sort of National Socialism, right? We're no longer talking, as Hannah Arendt said in a beautiful passage in Totalitarianism. She said something like, was it the Bolsheviks? I forget who it was, but even if you are not a criminal, history is calling you to be the criminal, because history needs a hero to fight the great villain. So, granted, you might not be the villain, but we have to demonize somebody. We have to criminalize somebody. We have to intern somebody. We have to fight against somebody, and you've been called to be the bad guy, right? So now your biological state of affairs, right? Your biological state of affairs is itself oppositional to, if you will, the state. Now I'm jumping ahead quite a bit. I understand, but this is the playing field that I function on as a genocide scholar, right? So I apologize if I went a little too off the topic, but I wanted to make sure that you understood this idea of instinct, right? This traditional, instinctual, it really is, I don't want to use the word pagan, but I can't think of any other term. It really is this sort of my connection to my family, my traditions, the earth, the ground, literally the stuff around me, the world of existence, to be technical. And there's really, That's the only way I know how to say it. All right. 2, tradition.